Please welcome Abhisek, founder of SafeDep. He will be speaking on Build Faster with AI, the rise of AI native SDLC. The session explores what it really means to build in an AI native development environment. Let us all welcome Abhisek with a big round of applause.
Hello. Am I audible? Okay, awesome. So I hope everyone is back from coffee. So how was the coffee? Was it effective? Hopefully everyone is awake. Okay, quick intro. Abhishek, uh, founder and CEO or probably CTO, I don't know, the solo founder at a company called SafeDep. We are an open source software supply chain security company. But the primary aspect of my talk today is how we, at an early stage startup, is coping up with the realities of agentic coding or AI native SDLC, as you like to call it, where everyone is shipping super fast. So it's no longer optional for us, right? So as someone coming from, pre-AI era, I had a certain notion of software engineering. But now I have to challenge that notion because shipping fast is no longer optional. Especially like when I was walking through the various booths, I saw college students building like years worth of software in probably a month or so. And guess what? It works, right? Uh, Before I start, quick raise of hands. How many of you are founders? Awesome. And how many of you are founders from a pre-AI era software engineering? Because, I mean, this talk is more about me sharing my experience on how I transitioned from the pre-AI era to what we are seeing right now. And, and how many of you are AI engineers today? Wow, awesome. I have a definition of AI engineer which I would like my team to adopt, but would love to hear from all of you, like what is an AI engineer today? Quick background about myself, almost 18 years of professional experience, almost a decade in security research, and then almost close to a decade in software engineering, more on the platform engineering side of things. But trying to wonder, like, is it still relevant? Like the way SDLC is changing and the way people are building things at speed, trying to figure out if all these years of experience, which I used to be very proud of before, is it still relevant or not, right? And in case you're wondering, what is this terminal? This is one of our open source tool called Graph, showing all the time Claude Code executed RM in my system. Yeah, so that's probably some of the aspect where we need to go a bit slow on the agentic side of things, but more on that later. Now, why do I care as a founder about AI native SDLC or agentic software engineering, right? That's because we are a company which is building in cybersecurity space, which is typically has always been a platform dominated space where you have AppSec platforms, cloud security platforms. Most large companies like Sneak and Wiz of the world will, have platforms with an enterprise sales motion. It's very hard to, build bottom-up or PLG-based cybersecurity products, right? We have one such company who is building open source, taking a PLG approach. But what we see right now is there is a tremendous shift. I have never seen this before, where starting from startup to very large enterprises are adopting the same technology at the same time. Generally, enterprises are slower to adopt, right? But now, when it comes to AI coding, like AI coding agents like cursors and cloud codes of the world, right? We are seeing everyone is at least experimenting with that. And that gives us, not just us, every single startup a tremendous opportunity because no one knows what is agentic SDLC, right? How does it look like eventually? Everyone is experimenting right now. So we strongly believe as a startup, if we can really, build fast and align with this agentic SDLC, this gives us a tremendous opportunity to build before platforms catch up, right? So for us, it is very important, like any other startup, to build and ship fast, right? But when I look at my last year's time, right, the time I spent from a retrospective perspective, I spent like almost 40% of my time not writing code or not doing engineering because we have a small team of 4 engineers. Everyone started as interns and eventually became full-time. Now, that really means that they're junior engineers. So coming from a pre-AI era, what I have seen, like you have to groom your engineers, get them work with the code base, and eventually they start producing quality results. So I did the same thing, but it turned out that it's just too slow right now. And I mean, 40% of time doing non-engineering, if I was looking at it from a engineering manager's perspective, it would be probably great. But when I'm looking at from a founder's perspective, it just doesn't make sense. It's now much easier for me to, work with Cloud Codes of the world and ship fast. So that's really my discovery, that how I can transform my SDLC into AI enabled or AI native SDLC with my engineers, which can ship at probably 10x, 20x, or probably 50x the velocity while owning the guarantees. Because software engineering, if you really think about it, it's not just writing code, it's also owning the guarantee. The users and customers does not care whether you generated the code with Cloud Code or Cursor. It has to work. It has to reliably work, right? So, personally, I would define that aspect as the engineering side of things. So how do we do that? One of the key things that I observed coming from a pre-AI era is that typically the SDLC was built in a way where which assume that writing good quality code which is secure requires a lot of focus from good engineers. So it was built always around the ability of engineers to focus, get into the flow state so that they can produce the best quality code which is possible, right? Because it was hard to write code. You can throw any code, as a college project, but it was hard to write professional code. And the entire SDLC was optimized so that engineers can spend maximum amount of time in the flow state, right? And it would lead to better good quality software at a decent enough velocity. Now that producing code has become much, much faster with AI coding agents, it just seems like tasks or handing off tasks is just too slow. The development is no longer the bottleneck. Everything else in the pre-AI era, the entire SDLC where humans were involved, like writing PRDs, manually reviewing code, doing the handoff, mentoring, all of this, everywhere where humans were involved is the new bottleneck, right? But obviously we can't get rid of all of that. We still have to maintain the quality, security side of things. Let's see how we can still move fast while owning the quality. So our opinionated definition of AI native SDLC, we are not there yet, but we want to be there as soon as possible. Our opinionated definition is just to let the agents work at agent speed. If we restrict the agents and slow it down, we are not getting the benefit. But how can we, engineer the SDLC or upgrade the SDLC in a way where we can leverage, the velocity of these new coding agents to its maximum? But very important, humans owns the guarantees. When I mean by guarantee is that the software that we are shipping is shipped with the same quality and security guarantees of the pre-AI era software engineering. So that is our goal, right? I don't know if it's fully, there will be trade-offs, there will likely be trade-offs. I don't know if it's fully possible, but the goal is let agents run as fast as possible while humans owning the guarantees. Personally, for me, one of the things that I see has significantly changed. Previously, I used to write a lot of GitHub issues. I used to think through, define the requirements, write the stories, write the acceptance criteria, even point out that these are some of the areas, things where things needs to be changed, maybe some refactors are required, right? Because I was optimizing for work distribution across my team, right? I'm talking about the pre-Cloud Code era. Everyone, like in 2025, everyone had Cursor. Cursor just allowed them to, write code faster. But still, that task handoff, task distribution, requirements definition was very important. But what I see now is it's much easier to work with Cloud Code and, just tell Cloud Code something like, I want to build something, interview me, let's come up with a spec and then build it. So for a startup of our size, where we are very small, small set of engineers, it just makes sense to get things done with Claude instead of spending all the time in handing off tasks. So typically how it looks like I work on, personally, I started working more on defining the problem in short so that I have clarity. I spend more time on writing down the desired user experience. How do I want the users to experience the solution that I'm trying to ship? Then spec with the agent, like work with Cloud Code in iteration. I actually spend quite a lot of decent amount of time in getting to a state where the spec looks detailed enough. It has things that I want it to consider, and also the non-functional aspect like security, test cases, those kind of things. If I do that, the end result is much faster. The agents are able to build it in loops at a very, very rapid space. I'll show some of the tools, some of the approach that we use, but building has become very fast if we iterate and create the spec in a fairly thoughtful way with more focus on the experience or the outcome that we are looking for. Human review. So currently we are still at a stage where we still do pull request review in addition to Devin and GitHub Copilot doing review for us. Pull request review is still, or I would say, a bottleneck for us currently. We are yet to figure out how to get it, reduce that review time, but that is where there is some guardrails in place at this point. For me, the typical development kind of starts like this. Like, say, for example, we had to add OAuth 2 support for one of our MCP servers. So it was like this. Let's work with, I just started with a prompt like, let's work on OAuth 2 support for our MCP server. Interview me as required and write a detailed spec. So I found that this actually works very well, especially with one specific Claude plugin that I'm using. It's a plugin called Superpowers, which consists of a bunch of skills which helps in this brainstorming process. And this plugin is from the official Anthropic marketplace itself. So why am I doing this? So instead of me spending 1 hour thinking and writing through all the requirements in a doc, I am involving Claude Code in the thinking process itself. Because when I'm starting, I have some idea about the requirement more from the outcome perspective, that this is what I want. But that is not a good enough requirement for engineering, right? You have to look into the code, analyze, figure out what is already there, what new infrastructure code needs to be added, what needs to be refactored, and all of that. What I found is that doing this iteration early leads to a spec which is much more implementation friendly, which means when Claude actually starts the building process, it has all the context it needs, code specific context, requirement context, acceptance criteria related things, testing related things while it is building. And this is how my development environment looks like these days. I use Ghosty with half of the terminal running Claude Code, and the remaining half again split into two parts with NeoVim and LazyGit. So amount of code that I'm writing by hand has significantly reduced, but this setup helps me to, you know, kind of maintain some control on the internal dependencies and the low-level architecture side of things. Say, for example, many a times Claude ends up violating separation of concerns or violating dry, don't repeat yourself principles, right? So this NeoVim just allows me to quickly, NeoVim and LazyGit allows me to quickly browse through the changes which Claude has made. And if I see something which does not, match my opinion of doing things or the opinion of the code base, I hardly refactor myself anymore. I just ask Claude that make this change and it does it. So some human loop is involved here, trying to figure out, and we are building some internal skills to even reduce this human involvement. Specifically on tool side of things, we are almost entirely on Claude Code, trying to kind of phase out from Cursor. Like Cursor has been used in the team for quite some time. We are using some of the default plugins from Anthropic. Particularly, I found this Superpowers plugin and the Ralph Loop plugin. Anyone familiar with Ralph Loop or used Ralph Loops? If you are building on greenfield application and you want the agent to produce fairly reliable code for long tasks, Ralph loops are very helpful. In very simple terms, Ralph loop is nothing but a loop that invokes the agent with a spec as input. Specs are nothing but markdown files where you write what you are looking for with some guardrails, like it should have test cases, it should not do this, it should do this. So it just invokes the coding agents like Claude Code in a loop, write a feature, review a feature, then validate with the spec whether it is aligned with the spec. If not, again make the changes. So Ralph loop is just a way, is just a agentic development pattern that allows you to run long running development work without too much human involvement, so that finally when you see the output, it is closest to what is there in the spec. So do check out Ralph loop. We also particularly use this code review plugin because what we found is that if two separate instances of Claude Code is involved, like one instance is building based on the spec, another instance is reviewing based on the spec, it does much better job instead of one single Claude Code session doing both the building and the reviewing. So that's again from practical experience, which kind of makes sense because if you're building, right, the context is full of things which the agent has already done. So most likely it will try to, the review will be aligned towards what is there in the context instead of, the agent focusing more on the review aspect. We have also started experimenting with using codecs for review, or even, two separate agents, one agent for building and one agent for reviewing. Don't see too much of a difference. Like if I use two separate sessions of Claude Code, it just works similarly. What we are starting to do is write a lot of internal skills to standardize things, right? Because if you think about it, if you have a junior engineer contributing to your code base, you would probably spend a lot of time in mentoring the junior engineers as part of pull request review. Like, as many of you senior engineers here, right, you'll probably agree that pull request is the best place to mentor junior agents, junior software engineers, sorry. Because most people don't read docs, but when you are providing the guidance as part of the pull request review, it helps mentor them. What we feel is that skills are the exact same thing for when it comes to AI agents. Like we are starting to write a lot of skills to codify our opinion of doing things so that Cloud Code or similar agents produce code or executes workflow which is closer to what is desired. So one interesting aha moment is that I was in gym and I got a notification on my GitHub app that someone created a GitHub issue on one of our open source projects. When I read the issue, I had a tentative idea of what needs to be done, but I still needed to do some analysis in order to come up with a fix. So I knew what needs to be done, but not exactly what needs to be done, not what needs to change, right? So I had two options. I would probably tag some of my teammates in Slack and ask them to look into the issue. In that specific case, I knew that all of them were involved in some other critical issues. So I just used Cloud Code, which was recently shipped for, in the mobile as also, the Cloud Code on the web feature. So just ask Cloud Code to look into this particular issue. And by the time I was done and went back, a pull request was waiting for me. Now, just to be honest, that pull request was not ready to be merged. Some iteration was required, but it actually did the correct analysis and made the correct changes for this specific case. If you are thinking of leveraging, this kind of approach, for us, there is not much of a security risk because most of our application, most of our code base is open source. So we are directly working on open source repositories. If you are working on private repository where the code is intellectual property for you, so do take care of prompt injection and other similar issues. Now, so far I spoke about a lot of things which is allowing me to shift fast as a founder instead of spending time in managing a team or handing off issues, writing detailed issues. When I'm working with Claude, things are much faster. But in last 2.5 to 3 months of our team adopting Claude, what we see is that fundamentally, I am still the blocker. I am the only senior engineer in a team of 4 junior engineers. I am still the blocker when it comes to reviewing code or providing context to engineers, right? So this is one important reason why just adopting, like at least from my perspective, just by adopting a coding agent is not enough. To truly have agentic SDLC, which is scalable, like ideally I would want everyone in the team to have the necessary context and ship fast with least dependency on me, right? So that is the ideal case I would want, because then it would be repeatable. It will be repeatable and scalable. As we grow, as we have resources to get more engineers, we would just get the engineer who fits into this type of SDLC. So what I realize is that it's very important to engineer the SDLC to work with agents. Just by adopting cursors or Cloud Code is not enough. The bottleneck shifts from one place to another. If we truly want to let the agents fly, as I mentioned in one of the slides probably, we have to figure out and reduce bottlenecks as much as possible. So internally, what we are trying to do is align every single software engineer in the team with the new reality. And as a founder, what worked for me was just being blunt to my team. I told them that it's much faster and easier for me to give a requirement to Claude and get it done than writing detailed issues. So as we speak more about these new realities, my other engineers in the team also started experimenting with various agents beyond cursor. We have somewhat identified that in order to really achieve AI native SDLC and benefit from the agents, we as a team has to transform. So I hear that many of you are AI engineers. So I would really love to hear from you, like how do you define AI engineers? But for us, we're trying to transition our software engineer role to more of an AI product engineer. Two things are very important. I think one specific thing is very important. Apart from AI, we are very, very intentionally adding the word product here, because we want every software engineer in the team to think in terms of outcomes and no longer a set of requirements that they have to translate in code. Translating requirements into code is now the territory of coding agents, and they do it very well, right? The specs, the working with agents to create specs, those specs are very detailed. It's very hard for a human to read through all those specs. But if you give that spec to an agent, they produce good enough code, right? So most important word for us is the product bit. We don't want software engineers to only think of writing code or translating code, but more of own the outcome. So we would want to give engineers much more autonomy, like starting from, we share all the insights coming from customers or users with our engineers. Like it's there in Notion, anyone can read it. It's there in Slack. Like most of our code base is open source. It allows every engineer in the team to see what kind of bugs is being reported, what kind of features are being requested by the community. So I would not say that prioritization has entirely changed, but we are trying to go there where every engineer prioritizes themselves. They operate like a startup founder within the team, owning up maybe a problem domain and continuously shipping within that. There are important aspects to it, like non-functional aspect, which we have not cracked yet, but this is what we want to go towards. And in this reality, apart from owning outcome, one very important part is the user experience bit, because we are seeing no matter what we build, even if we solve a very complicated problem in our domain as code, as a engineering problem, it becomes extremely easy for anyone else to replicate the same in code, right? Writing code, building has become very easy. So as a company, what is that moat? What is that competitive advantage? Why will users use our product and not an existing platform who can very easily build the same feature, right? The conclusion, or the somewhat idea that we have reached is really the experience, right? SDLC is changing. If you believe that SDLC is really changing, that means the experience in which developers, security engineers, and other personas participating in the SDLC will also change. And I think Purvi mentioned about, I think a lot of people are saying building for humans to building for agents, right? So we are focusing a lot on that experience. What we are building, who is the persona? Is it a human or is it an agent? Now probably agent is the default persona. We have to figure out why a human is a persona. And in fact, in cybersecurity use cases, a human is an important persona. We can't just give everything to the agent, right? But how will that human experience the product? Cybersecurity comes now, most recent phase of cybersecurity was the DevSecOps era, where you have all the security tools in the CI/CD. That is changing for sure, right? CI/CD feedback is too slow for agents. So what is the new reality? So for us, we believe, thinking about how the AI SDLC will turn out and building for that new experience is really the differentiation and moat. If we get that right, that will give value to us, to our product and to our customers. So we spend a lot of time thinking about that. Uh, mm, yeah, one more important aspect of the AI product engineer narrative is guardrails and feedback loops. What I want in future is every engineer in my team is actually owning the outcome and building the necessary guardrails so that a fleet of agents works for that engineer and ships fast, right? But the human is responsible for the outcome and the non-functional aspect of the software. We are not ready to sacrifice on quality, security, reliability, scalability aspect of software. We still want to hold on to it from the pre-AI era, right? And in our definition of AI product engineer, it is the human who owns this non-functional aspect. Like how do they ensure that this is reliable, this is working? Maybe obvious way is test case generation, right? Now, was there resistance? I just want to see some quick hands. How many of you are resisting AI in SDLC? Like you don't believe that agents will mostly write code? No one. I mean, if I was not a founder, I would have resisted for sure. Like I would have said that, yeah, AI will write code which will break and all of that. But I don't believe that anymore because I have to look into a lot of other aspects, not just writing code. Sorry, how much? Time's up? Okay, cool. So I'll just go through fast. I think we think that AI is just another abstraction, and the software engineer role will have to upgrade itself to this abstraction, and we truly believe that it will allow the human to do more meaningful tasks. It's not going to replace the human, but allow the human to do work at a different level of abstraction. So this is kind of like a maturity model. Like we started with AI assisted, where cursors and copilots were assisting us in writing code. Then AI augmented, where we are giving some tasks to Cloud Codes of the world and do it. But we are targeting what is called AI native, like where AI is a first-class participant in the SDLC. So there's a very good talk by Dan Guido of Trail of Bits, like how we made Trail of Bits AI native. If you're interested, do have a look. I'll just take 5 more minutes. We are a security company, right? We don't want to get hacked. And running agents has some inherent risks. So we do some of the things, some security practices, like we run Cloud Code in a sandbox called dev containers. Then we built a bunch of open source tools to observe these AI coding agents like Cloud Code, cursors, and all of that, and also enforce certain security guardrails. Specifically, if you are interested, this is Griff, one of our open source tools, which is used to log every single activity, action performed by an agent like Cloud Code or Cursor. Say, for example, something went wrong. We want to audit, did Cloud Code was exploited via prompt injection? Did it read some credentials? Did it delete some file? Did it executed some untrusted command, right? So Griff was built for that. Griff is a audit trail tool available as open source project, built in public. Do try out the GitHub repository. Griff allows us to observe every single action performed by Cloud Code, and we are also building a policy layer on top. And finally, we also have another open source tool called PMG, which ensures a sandbox enforcement for Cloud Code and all these things. Like when it installs open source package, the installation is executed in a sandbox to prevent supply chain attacks like Shai-Hulud's and singularities of the world. Cool, that's about it. If you are also transforming your SDLC to AI native SDLC, and if you have any idea, love to chat. Thank you so much.